Whispers of Shadow presents, written and narrated by Gregory Sparrow. The last train that never reached King's Cross. The emergency call lasted exactly 27 seconds. No screams, no static, no interference, just a calm male voice. If anyone hears this, don't let train 417 leave Baker Street. The dispatcher immediately checked the schedule. There had never been a train 417. Not that night. Not that week. Not at any point in the history of the London Underground. The caller continued. We're still moving, but the stations have stopped existing. Silence followed. Then, somewhere in the background, the unmistakable sound of train doors opening. A mechanical announcement echoed through the recording. Except every railway expert who later examined the tape agreed on one impossible detail. The voice making the announcement had never been used anywhere on the Underground. Not in modern recordings. Not in historical archives. Not even in experimental testing. The dispatcher tried to keep the caller talking. What station are you at? For nearly 5 seconds, there was only breathing. Then the man answered. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't think London is above us anymore. The call ended. Police traced the signal within minutes. It originated from deep beneath King's Cross, St. Pancras Underground Station. Maintenance crews searched every accessible tunnel, every abandoned platform, every emergency shaft, every service passage. Nothing. No passengers, no damaged train, no mobile phone, no evidence that anyone had ever made the call. The investigation was quietly closed. 3 days later, a technician reviewing CCTV footage noticed something no one else had seen. At precisely 12:17 a.m., a train entered Platform 5. Passengers clearly stood inside. The headlights illuminated the tunnel exactly as expected. The train slowed, prepared to stop. Then, without ever leaving the rails, it simply continued forward into solid concrete, not through a hidden tunnel, not into a maintenance entrance, directly into the station wall. The footage never glitched. The cameras never lost signal. The train never disappeared because of interference. It simply kept moving until the last carriage vanished inside concrete that had not contained an opening for more than 70 years. No collision, no explosion, no debris, nothing. When investigators rushed onto the platform, there was only silence. The wall was untouched. The tracks ended exactly where they always had. Nothing suggested that a full underground train, carrying dozens of passengers, had just driven straight through it. London Underground engineers declared the footage impossible. Digital forensic analysts confirmed it had never been edited. Frame by frame, pixel by pixel. Every expert reached the same conclusion. The recording was authentic, but what it showed could not happen. The incident should have remained buried. Another unexplained file hidden in a forgotten archive. It didn't, because 2 weeks later, someone mailed a thick brown envelope to the Transport Investigation Office. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside were 43 photographs. Every photograph showed the same train. Train 417. Standing inside a station that did not appear on any underground map. The architecture matched no known platform in London. The signs were blank. The clocks all displayed exactly the same time. 12:17. Every passenger stared directly into the camera. None of them appeared frightened. None attempted to leave. Each photograph had been taken from a different angle, yet one detail remained identical. At the very end of every platform, just beyond the last lamp, stood the same motionless figure, too dark to identify, too tall to be certain, watching, waiting. On the back of the final photograph, someone had written 5 words. "We never reached King's Cross." That envelope became the beginning of case file LU-017. Officially, it does not exist. Unofficially, it remains one of the strangest investigations ever associated with the London Underground. Because during the following 17 years, more than 40 witnesses reported boarding trains that were never scheduled. Drivers described signals changing on their own. Control room operators received radio transmissions from trains that had been retired decades earlier. Maintenance workers found fresh footprints inside tunnels sealed since the Second World War. Every report ended the same way. 12:17 a.m. And every investigation concluded with the exact same handwritten instruction. If train 417 appears, do not board the investigation. The first official record connected to case file IU-017 was never intended for public release. It was written by Senior Operations Inspector Arthur Collins, dated March 14, 2009. The document was only 6 pages long. 4 of those pages had been heavily redacted. What remained was enough to convince investigators that they were dealing with something far beyond an ordinary railway incident. According to Collins, the CCTV recording from Platform 5 was only discovered because an engineer had been reviewing footage after a minor electrical fault. No one had been searching for a missing train. No emergency had been reported. The footage should never have attracted attention. Yet, at exactly 12:17 a.m., every camera covering Platform 5 captured the same impossible sequence. The platform was almost empty. Only 7 passengers waited for the next scheduled service. A young woman reading a paperback novel, an elderly man carrying a folded umbrella, Two university students laughing over something on a mobile phone. A railway cleaner pushing a maintenance cart. A businessman checking his watch. And another figure standing alone near the very end of the platform. That last passenger never moved. Not once. When investigators enlarged the recording, they discovered something unsettling. The man's face couldn't be identified, not because it was hidden, not because the image quality was poor. His features simply refused to remain consistent. Every frame showed a slightly different face, different eyes, different nose, different age, almost as though the camera couldn't decide who it was recording. Digital analysts spent weeks examining the anomaly. No corruption, no compression artifacts. Nothing explained it. At precisely 12:17, the tunnel lights flickered once, only once. The platform clocks stopped. Every digital display froze. Even the advertising screens went black. Exactly 2 seconds later, headlights appeared inside the tunnel. Passengers naturally stepped closer to the edge. The approaching train looked completely ordinary. Its exterior carried the familiar underground colors. Its windows reflected the station lights. Its destination display, however, was blank. No station name, no line number. Nothing. Only darkness behind the glass. The train slowed exactly as it approached the stopping point. Brakes could be heard. Steel grinding against steel. Everything behaved normally until the front carriage reached the platform. Instead of stopping, it continued. Not faster, not slower. Simply forward. The first carriage entered solid concrete. Then the second. Then the third. Each carriage disappeared without resistance, without damage, without sound. The platform remained perfectly intact. The waiting passengers never reacted. That detail disturbed investigators more than anything else. The 7 people, standing only a few meters away, behaved as though nothing unusual was happening. The young woman calmly turned another page of her book. The businessman adjusted his tie. The cleaner leaned on his cart. No one screamed. No one ran. No one even looked surprised. It was as though they weren't seeing the same train. When detectives attempted to identify the 7 passengers, they discovered another impossibility. None of them existed. The oyster cards recorded by the station gates belonged to real people, but every card had been used simultaneously somewhere else in London. The woman whose card entered Baker Street at 12:15 had been shopping in Camden, confirmed by multiple CCTV cameras. The businessman had been attending a corporate dinner across the city. The elderly man had died 3 years earlier. The railway cleaner had retired in 1998. The students denied ever visiting King's Cross that night. Every identity dissolved under investigation. Only one person remained completely untraceable: the motionless figure at the end of the platform. There was no entry record, no ticket, no face, no digital trace, nothing. Inspector Collins requested access to archived station blueprints. He wanted to determine whether an abandoned tunnel once existed behind the concrete wall. Engineers produced plans dating back more than 100 years. Every version showed exactly the same layout. There had never been a tunnel beyond Platform 5. Not during construction, not after expansion, not during wartime modifications. Nothing. Solid ground. Nearly 20 meters of reinforced concrete. Then, bedrock. The train had driven into a wall that had always been there. 3 days later, another report arrived. This one came from the signaling control center. Operator Helen Murray had been working the night shift. At exactly 12:17 a.m., every signal on one section of the network briefly displayed the same train identification. There was only one problem. Train numbers on the London Underground never reached that format on the affected line. The software rejected the identification immediately. Yet, before it disappeared, every workstation captured the same data. Train 417. Destination unknown. Status running. Estimated arrival unavailable. The entry remained visible for only 4 seconds, long enough for every operator in the control room to see it, too short for anyone to stop it. When engineers examined the servers, there was no record that Train 417 had ever existed. It was as if the system itself had briefly remembered something before forgetting it again. By the end of the month, case file LU-017 had quietly expanded. Not because of public attention. The public knew nothing. It expanded because more staff members began reporting the same impossible detail. Whenever clocks stopped at 12:17, someone always claimed to hear a train approaching. Even where no tracks existed, the driver's log. The next breakthrough came from a source investigators almost ignored. It wasn't a passenger. It wasn't a security guard. It wasn't even someone involved in the original incident. It was a retired underground driver. His name was Michael Harrington. He had worked beneath London for 38 years. Thousands of shifts, millions of passengers, an almost flawless safety record. When detectives first contacted him, he refused to speak. Only after being shown a still image from the CCTV recording did his expression change. He stared at the photograph for nearly a minute, then quietly asked a single question. "Did you finally see it too?" The interview lasted almost 4 hours. Only fragments were included in case file LU-017. The rest remain classified. According to Harrington, every experienced underground driver knew there were things that happened beneath London that never appeared in official manuals. Most were harmless. Electrical interference, old ventilation shafts producing strange echoes, signals behaving unpredictably during storms. But there was one subject drivers never discussed in front of trainees: the last train. Not because they believed in ghosts, because enough respected drivers had independently described the same experience. It never appears during busy hours, Harrington explained. It waits until the network is nearly empty. After midnight. When you're alone. He described driving the Circle Line one winter evening in 1996. Everything had been routine. Visibility was excellent. Signals were functioning normally. His final scheduled journey before returning to the depot. As his train entered a long tunnel, the radio suddenly emitted a burst of static. Then silence. Every dashboard light briefly dimmed. The speedometer dropped to 0. Not because the train stopped. It continued moving. But, according to the instruments, it wasn't moving anymore. Moments later, he saw another train ahead. That should have been impossible. The signaling system maintained strict separation between services. No train could occupy the same tunnel section. Yet there it was, only a few hundred meters ahead, traveling at exactly the same speed. Its rear lights glowed faintly in the darkness. Harrington immediately contacted the control room. No answer. He tried the emergency frequency. Nothing. Every channel remained silent. He slowed his train. The distance never changed. No matter how much he accelerated or reduced speed. The other train remained exactly the same distance ahead, always visible, always unreachable, for nearly 6 minutes. Then something happened that Harrington still struggled to describe. The train ahead entered a gentle curve. For less than 2 seconds, its interior became visible through the side windows. Every seat appeared occupied. Dozens of passengers. None of them moved. None looked at one another. Every single face was turned toward him, watching through the glass, perfectly still. I've carried commuters after football matches. I've driven through evacuation drills. I've transported thousands of exhausted Londoners. I know what people look like on trains. Those weren't passengers. Detectives asked him what he meant. His answer appeared underlined 3 times in the transcript. They looked like people, pretending to be people. Harrington admitted something he had never reported. For years, every time he remembered that night, he became less certain about one detail. He couldn't remember seeing the front of the train, only the rear. It was as though his memory simply refused to picture it. Investigators assumed trauma had distorted his recollection until they interviewed another retired driver, then another, then another. 7 drivers, different decades, different underground lines, different weather conditions, different years, yet every one of them described exactly the same thing. A train that could only ever be remembered from behind. The similarities became increasingly disturbing. Every encounter occurred after midnight. Every driver temporarily lost radio contact. Every dashboard clock froze. Every signal ahead showed a clear route. Every witness estimated following the train for approximately 6 minutes. None could explain where it disappeared, because every interview ended with the same sentence. I blinked, and it was gone. Engineers dismissed the accounts as coincidence, until investigators compared maintenance records. Each reported encounter had occurred within minutes of unexplained power fluctuations affecting isolated tunnel sections. Small disturbances, barely noticeable, too brief to trigger emergency procedures, yet every fluctuation occurred at precisely 12:17 a.m. The investigation expanded again, this time into forgotten storage rooms beneath the network headquarters. Thousands of boxes filled with maintenance reports dating back decades. Most contained nothing unusual. Routine inspections, track repairs, water leaks, electrical upgrades. Then, inside a dust-covered cabinet labeled 1978 Signal Archive, an analyst found a slim black notebook. No catalog number, no author, no official stamp. Only one handwritten sentence on the cover. If train 417 returns, do not follow. Inside, every page described the same recurring event. Drivers glimpsing another train, control rooms losing communication, clocks stopping, passengers reporting stations they could never identify afterward. The earliest entry was dated October 3rd. The most recent had been written only 8 days before the King's Cross CCTV incident. No explanation accompanied the notebook. No department claimed ownership. No employee admitted writing it. Yet, the handwriting remained identical across more than 50 years. The final page contained something investigators had never seen before. A rough sketch, not of a train, not of a tunnel. A station, long, silent, completely empty, except for one detail. At the far end of the platform stood a single figure, watching the tracks. Beneath the drawing, someone had written, "It isn't waiting for passengers, it's waiting for replacements." The room fell silent. For the first time since the investigation had begun, even the most skeptical officers stopped looking for ordinary explanations, because every new document didn't contradict the last one. It confirmed it. Something had been moving beneath London for decades, something that followed no timetable, appeared on no map, and somehow had learned how to leave just enough evidence behind to make people question their own memory. The sealed platform. 3 weeks after Harrington's interview, the investigation was reassigned to a smaller internal team. Officially, the reason was budget. Unofficially, too many people had started asking the same question. If Train 417 didn't exist, why had so many unrelated witnesses described it in almost identical detail over the course of 50 years? The answer, investigators believed, might lie somewhere beneath King's Cross, not in the active station. Far below it, in areas that had been closed long before modern passengers ever used the underground. Access required 3 separate authorization keys. Even veteran maintenance staff had never entered those tunnels. The passages were originally constructed during one of the underground's earliest expansions, before being abandoned and sealed. According to official records, they were empty. No tracks, no platforms, no equipment. Nothing worth preserving. Yet, maintenance maps still marked the area as requiring an annual structural inspection. No inspection reports could be found. On the evening of April 8th, 2009, a 4-person team descended beneath King's Cross. Inspector Arthur Collins, structural engineer Rebecca Shaw, signal technician Daniel Price, and Police Sergeant Owen Mercer. Each wore a helmet camera. Each carried an independent digital audio recorder. Every device had synchronized clocks. 12:03 a.m. The descent began. The air changed almost immediately. It wasn't colder. It wasn't warmer. It simply felt still. The familiar vibration of trains passing overhead disappeared. London was only a few meters above them. Yet the city suddenly sounded impossibly distant. No footsteps from passengers, no announcements, no rumbling carriages, nothing, only their own breathing. Daniel Price checked the signal meter. No radio reception. No surprise, he muttered. We're deep underground. He attempted to contact the surface anyway. Static, nothing more. The tunnel narrowed before opening into an enormous circular chamber. Old brickwork covered the walls. Victorian engineering, much older than the surrounding station. Water slowly dripped from the ceiling. Every sound echoed far longer than it should have. Rebecca measured the dimensions. According to every available blueprint, the chamber should not have existed. Solid earth was supposed to occupy that exact location. At 12:15, they found tracks, rust-covered, unused for decades. At least, that was their first impression. Then Collins knelt beside one rail. He ran a gloved finger across the steel. It came away clean, bright, polished, recently used. No rust, Rebecca stared at the rail. Impossible. She photographed it. The flash illuminated the tunnel ahead. For less than a second, another set of footprints became visible in the dust. Fresh, hundreds of them, leading toward the darkness. None returning. The investigators followed. No one suggested turning back. Later, Collins admitted that this decision made no sense. Every instinct should have told them to leave. Instead, they all felt strangely compelled to continue, as though reaching the end of the tunnel had become the only logical thing left to do. At exactly 12:17, every digital clock stopped. Helmet cameras continued recording. Audio recorders continued running, but the time display froze. 12:17:04. Every device, every battery, every watch, exactly the same second. Daniel looked up first. I hear something. Nobody answered, because they heard it too. Far away. Metal wheels, rolling slowly over steel rails, not echoing. Approaching, Rebecca whispered, There's no active line down here. The sound grew louder, rhythmic, measured, the unmistakable approach of an underground train, yet no air moved through the tunnel. Normally, an approaching train pushed a wave of wind ahead of it. There was nothing. Only sound. The tunnel ahead slowly brightened, not with station lighting, with headlights. Two pale circles emerging from complete darkness. Inspector Collins raised his flashlight instinctively. The beam illuminated. Nothing. No train. No tunnel walls. Only empty darkness. Yet the headlights continued growing brighter. Closer. Closer. The sound of wheels intensified until it filled the chamber. Daniel instinctively stepped away from the tracks. Rebecca couldn't move. She stared directly ahead, as if hypnotized. Then, a voice, soft, almost conversational. It came from somewhere beyond the light. Platform change. None of them recognized the announcement. It wasn't the familiar voice used throughout the underground. It sounded older, calmer, almost human. The announcement continued. The service now arriving. A pause. Is accepting new passengers. Daniel's breathing became rapid. There isn't anything there, he whispered. But I can hear the doors. Everyone could. Hydraulic mechanisms, locks releasing. Doors sliding open. The sound surrounded them. Perfectly clear, perfectly real. Still, nothing could be seen. Then Sergeant Mercer did something that none of the others expected. He took one step forward, then another. His helmet camera showed only darkness, yet his body reacted as though he had just entered an open train doorway. He lifted one foot, stepping over an invisible gap. Then disappeared. Not faded, not hidden. One frame he was there. The next, he was gone. The camera feed ended instantly. No static, no impact. Just black. "Owen!" Collins shouted. His voice echoed through the chamber. No answer. Only the slow mechanical sound of doors closing. The unseen train began moving again. The headlights faded. The wheels rolled away into the darkness. Within seconds, the tunnel became completely silent. The three remaining investigators searched for Mercer for almost 2 hours. Every side passage, every maintenance shaft, every ventilation chamber. Nothing. No footprints beyond the point where he vanished. No damaged brickwork. No hidden doorway. No collapsed floor. No trace that another human being had ever been standing there. When rescue teams arrived at dawn, they searched for another 3 days. Officially, Sergeant Owen Mercer disappeared during an unauthorized exploration of abandoned infrastructure. His body was never recovered. Unofficially, Case File LU-017 received a new instruction, written in red ink, added to the first page. If you hear the doors open, do not step forward. The recording. Sergeant Owen Mercer was declared missing on April 12, 2009. The official investigation concluded that he had become disoriented inside an abandoned section of the underground and fallen into an undiscovered shaft. No shaft was ever found. No remains were recovered. No equipment was located. His family received a formal letter of condolence. The case was quietly closed. Case File LU-017 was not. 41 days later, an envelope arrived at the London Underground Operations Center. No postage, no fingerprints, no return address. Security footage showed no one delivering it. The envelope simply appeared in the overnight mail tray, sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. Inside was a single digital voice recorder. Its batteries were almost new. The device contained only one audio file. Length 23 minutes. The timestamp displayed a date 6 days after Mercer had disappeared. Digital forensic specialists immediately examined the recorder. Its internal clock had never been altered. The memory chip showed no evidence of editing, no deleted files, no overwritten sectors. Everything indicated that the recording had been made exactly when the device claimed. 6 days after its owner had vanished. The first 4 minutes contained nothing unusual: footsteps, steady breathing, the faint scrape of boots against old concrete. Mercer's voice remained calm, professional. This is Sergeant Owen Mercer. Audio log. I've become separated from the others. I still have my flashlight. I'm attempting to locate the access tunnel. He called Collins's name several times. No reply. Only echoes. At approximately 6 minutes, something changed. Mercer stopped walking. The recorder captured distant station announcements. Not distorted, not faint. Perfectly clear. The familiar chime preceding every underground announcement echoed through the tunnel. Then a voice spoke. "This service terminates." A pause. "Where it always has." Mercer whispered, "I don't recognize that announcement. It's not one of ours." He resumed walking. His breathing became faster. "I can see lights." Another pause. "There shouldn't be lights." The recording then captured something investigators could never explain. Footsteps, not Mercer's, someone else's, walking in perfect rhythm behind him. One step, pause. One step, pause. Always matching his pace. Never getting closer. Never falling behind. Mercer heard them too. "You don't have to hide." "I'm police." The footsteps stopped immediately. So did Mercer. For 11 full seconds. Absolute silence. Then, one final step, directly behind him. Mercer inhaled sharply. The recorder fell silent. Not because it stopped recording. Because Mercer stopped speaking. Nearly 30 seconds later, his voice returned. But something had changed. The tone. The rhythm. The emotion. He sounded calm, almost relieved. "I found the platform." Long pause. "It was here all along." Investigators later noted that Mercer never described the station, not once. He never mentioned signs, walls, tracks, architecture. Instead, he spoke only about the people waiting there. "They've been here longer than I thought." "They said the next train is almost here." "They've been saving my seat." Every person who listened to the recording independently reported the same strange sensation. They couldn't remember Mercer's exact words, only their meaning, as if the conversation slipped away moments after hearing it. Audio engineers replayed the file hundreds of times. Each transcription differed slightly. No two transcripts matched perfectly. It was the only recording in the Metropolitan Police Archive that refused to produce a consistent written record. At minute 18, Mercer laughed. Not nervously, genuinely. The sound unsettled everyone who knew him. According to family members, he hadn't laughed like that since he was a teenager. Then he said something that appeared identical in every transcription. "I understand now. They aren't trapped." "We are." For nearly 2 minutes, nothing happened. Only the faint sound of distant conversations. Hundreds of voices, none loud enough to distinguish individual words. It sounded like commuters waiting for the next train. Patient, quiet, almost peaceful. Then the announcement returned. Ladies and gentlemen, the next service to King's Cross will not be stopping. Mercer answered immediately. I know. I'm staying. The final 60 seconds remain among the most disturbing pieces of evidence in the entire file. A train approached. This time, the sound was unmistakable. Steel wheels, brakes, doors opening, the familiar warning tone. Then complete silence. No boarding, no movement, no voices, nothing. Exactly 23 seconds later, Mercer spoke one final sentence. If anyone hears this, please don't come looking. The doors closed. The train departed. The recording continued for another 41 seconds. Empty platform noise. Distant echoes. Then, without warning, the file ended. Not with a click, not with static. It simply stopped. The recorder itself revealed one final mystery. Its casing was covered in an extremely fine layer of black dust. Laboratory analysis failed to identify it. It contained traces of iron, carbon, and microscopic mineral structures unlike anything found in the London Underground. The report concluded with a sentence that puzzled every investigator. Sample origin cannot be matched to any known geological layer beneath Greater London. That single recording changed the direction of the investigation forever. Until then, they believed Train 417 might be a hallucination, a forgotten experimental service, an elaborate hoax. After hearing Mercer's voice, no one on the investigative team believed that anymore, because one question now overshadowed every other. If Mercer had survived for 6 days, where had he actually been? The final entry. Following Mercer's recording, access to the lower tunnels beneath King's Cross was permanently revoked. Concrete barriers were reinforced. Steel security doors were welded shut. Every surviving blueprint of the abandoned section was removed from the engineering archive. Officially, the area no longer existed. Case file LU-017 was marked closed. That should have been the end of the story. It wasn't. On the night the file was sealed, one final incident occurred. It was witnessed by 3 people working independently: a signal operator, a station supervisor, and a CCTV technician reviewing live camera feeds. None of them knew the others had seen the same thing. At exactly 12:17 a.m., every platform display at King's Cross went blank. For just 3 seconds, passengers barely noticed. Most assumed it was another technical fault. When the displays returned, one additional service briefly appeared. No line color, no destination. Only 4 words: Special Service, Platform 5. 3 seconds later, the message vanished. System logs later confirmed it had never been generated. The CCTV technician immediately reviewed the live feed. Platform 5 appeared completely normal. Commuters waited for the next scheduled train. Nothing unusual. Then, for a single frame, another platform appeared over the image, not replacing it, overlaying it, longer, darker, older, filled with silent passengers standing perfectly still, every one of them facing the camera. The image disappeared before the next frame. 25 cameras captured the same single-frame anomaly. Frame perfect, identical. No explanation was ever found. 2 days later, Inspector Arthur Collins resigned. He never publicly discussed the investigation again. Before leaving, he placed one handwritten page inside case file LU-017. It became the final document in the archive. The note read, "We spent months searching for a train that shouldn't exist." Eventually, we realized we had asked the wrong question. The train was never lost. It arrives exactly where it intends to. The real mystery is why it occasionally comes here. No signature, no date, nothing else. The file remained untouched for almost 12 years, until renovations beneath King's Cross uncovered an old maintenance room hidden behind a brick wall. Workers expected to find obsolete electrical equipment. Instead, they discovered a wooden bench, a rusted station clock, and a stack of neatly folded newspapers. The newest newspaper was dated. The same morning, no footprints surrounded the room, no signs of forced entry. Nothing suggested anyone had entered it for decades. The clock on the wall had stopped. 12:17. Among the newspapers lay a single underground ticket. Old paper, yellowed with age, never validated. Printed on the front were the words, King's Cross. On the reverse, someone had written in faded blue ink, "Wait for the last train." The ticket was sent to the forensic laboratory. It disappeared during transport. The sealed evidence container arrived empty. Its security seal remained intact. No explanation was ever provided. Today, if you stand on certain underground platforms after midnight, you may hear something unusual. Not every night, not even every year. A train approaching where no train is scheduled. The distant echo of doors opening. An announcement no employee recognizes. Most people dismiss it. They check their phones. They look down the tunnel. They wait for the next ordinary service. And nothing happens. But according to the final unpublished appendix of Case File LU-017, that isn't the moment investigators feared most. the dangerous moment comes if someone standing beside you quietly says, "This is our train," because every witness who reported hearing those words turned to see who had spoken and later admitted there had been no one standing there. The original recording of Train 417 is no longer listed in any official archive. Mercer's voice recorder disappeared years ago. The photographs from the anonymous envelope cannot be located. Inspector Collins died without giving another interview. The notebook from 1958 was reported missing during a cataloging audit. Every physical piece of evidence connected to case file LU-017 has vanished. Every piece except one, deep within the automated signaling network of the London Underground. Engineers still occasionally discover a line of code that no one remembers writing. It appears for only a fraction of a second before deleting itself. Whenever it does, every connected system records the same impossible destination. Train 417. Next stop, King's Cross. Estimated arrival 12:17. No train ever arrives. At least, none that appears on the timetable. End